Good morning everyone and welcome back to the channel. If you haven't already, please subscribe down below. I'm trying to get 1,000 subscribers this year, so if you can subscribe, like, share this video, help me get there, that'd be massively appreciated. If you've already clicked this video, you're probably interested in purchasing a Simarine Pico. Now, I'm going to go through the different Pico modules, the different Pico models, and I'm going to go through a little bit of the wiring information for the Pico. I'm going to simplify it. So just getting straight in there, then I'm going to go into the Pico models, what you've got. So you've got 3 Pico models on the website at the moment. You've got the Pico 1, the Pico and the Pico Plus. These range from very basic spec. The Pico 1 is ideal for a camper van installation or an RV installation, and the Pico Plus is more aimed at your super yachts. It's got loads of inputs, you can attach lots of things to it. The Pico Plus for most people is probably not going to be as relevant, especially if you're installing it yourself, because I would imagine people with super yachts don't install this sort of stuff themselves. So if you're looking for a camper van, I would recommend the Pico 1. And then you've got the in-between that takes a few more modules than the Pico 1, not as many as the Pico Plus, which is the Pico. When you are shopping for this, I have been told from a salesman that the Pico 1 is being discontinued. That doesn't mean it's not going to work okay. I've seen reviews and I've seen people that have used them and they're saying that they work fine. However, just one thing to note, future firmware upgrades might not be there, future compatibility with their new modules might not be there. So that's just one thing to consider when you're shopping. Maybe go for the base Pico model if you've got the extra money to spend. So now we've got that out of the way, I've ended up going for the Pico Plus just because I saw the deal on the internet, and it was just, I couldn't refuse to get the extra one for the extra few pounds what I was going to spend. It comes in a very well presented box. You've got a nice protective cover there. I went for the recessed module, and basically what this means is I've got a CNC aluminium bezel that's going to recess, and I'm going to see 1 or 2 millimeters sticking out from the unit. I'm planning on putting it just right about here, so I'm just going to be able to see that thin little bit of aluminium sticking out. However, if you couldn't pick up the recessed one, it's not a thick unit anyway, and it's by no means an ugly unit, so I wouldn't mind just sticking this straight on surface mounted. You've probably got about 10 mil there that's going to be sticking out. It's very well finished. I mean, you get a similar feel when you grab this to like a flagship smartphone. It's very well built, solid, and of course with it being at the with it being aimed at the marine industry, it's waterproof and dustproof. So moving on from that, you're going to get a bit of an installation pack with that, some cables, but we'll explain more about that in the wiring diagram later. And here's my shunt. So to monitor your battery current draw, you're going to need a shunt. There's loads of modules and shunts for these Pico modules. Basically, there's probably 2 that you're going to be looking at for a camper van or an RV installation: the SC302T and the SC502T. And basically what those numbers mean is the 30 and the 50 is the current of that particular module. So the 30 is a 300 amp module, the 50 is a 500 amp module. You get them scaled on what size batteries you've got. The 2 is 2 additional voltage inputs, so you can monitor the voltage of 2 additional battery banks. I'm going to be using one of those voltages for my starter battery, and you could probably, if you've got additional battery banks in whatever you're installing, you could put one to that as well, but one of mine's going to be left free. And the T stands for tank inputs, so I'm going to be using one of my clean water tank, and you can also, because they're based on resistance, you can put anything with a resistance reading on that, so temperature sensors, that sort of stuff. Hopefully that's cleared up the number side of that. So the company what I bought mine from, they are Vision Marine. They've not sponsored this video, they've not paid for anything of this video. I purchased this product from them. They've been absolutely fantastic. I like the idea that I can contact someone online. They're very reactive on the Facebook Messenger. I don't really like to pick up the phone and have to wait in queue, so I just like to send a message and come back to it when I've got time. They've been great at answering my questions. They informed me that the Pico 1 is going to be discontinued, which is good for me because I personally didn't want to risk having firmware going out of date. I always want the most recent firmware, especially when you're spending this kind of money on a product. You want it to be there and up to date all the time. So I would recommend using Vision Marine, and if you do find a better price anywhere else, I'd recommend giving them a call or giving them a message, just letting them know that you're interested in buying one, but they're not the cheapest price, and maybe they can do a bit of a competitive price for you. So now, that's the very basics of the information. I'm going to be putting the leaflet in the description so you can click that and read through it, but as a very fundamental, you've probably got everything that you need there moving forward and deciding what to buy. Now the wiring diagram itself, it is quite overcomplicated. especially if you're maybe not coming from an electrician's background, it might be a bit overwhelming. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to simplify that wiring diagram and make it more specific for a camper van installation. There's a lot of stuff on the one from the company that it basically has nautical instruments, all sorts of stuff like that. That's probably going to confuse the situation. You've got wires going everywhere, so I'm just going to remove everything that is not needed for an RV installation. However, if you are using the wiring diagram what I provide, you use that at your own risk. I'm not responsible for any errors that you make while using that wiring diagram, but I'm going to link that in the description. I'll give you the Google Drive docs. I'll flash it up on the screen now as well so you can screenshot it. So what I'm going to do now then is I'm going to get to it and I'm going to start installing my Pico, I think right about here, or maybe I'm going to go up here. I haven't quite decided yet. I'm going to check the wiring. Here's probably going to be best for cable management, but I'm not going to be able to get around the back to be able to screw the clamps in, because that's how the recess works. You've got two brackets that hold it in. But I'll do a little bit of a speeded up video of that. Like I say, I'm not going to go into depth on the wiring just because it's all in really tight spaces with not much lighting, so it's going to be very poorly recorded. But I will put that wiring diagram up just to assist you when you're doing yours. Well, that's the Pico installed now. Pretty successful, relatively easy job. Probably the hardest bit I found was cutting this hole out here. It was quite awkward to get the jigsaw in. In hindsight, I probably should have done it before the unit was installed, but I didn't know I was getting this unit when I was putting this in. The most difficult parts, as I say, were cutting the hole out, probably heading the cables. I would imagine most people would find that difficult. I was heading 50mm cables, and that's quite difficult to do in such a tight space under there. And the thumb screws to secure the back of this unit, because I had to reach right around the back, getting those thumb screws and being able to get enough torsion on it. Maybe I could have replaced them with some normal M3 like hex head screws to make it a little bit easier, so I could have got around the back with a ratchet. But it's all secure now. I made this hole quite tight just so I could secure it with a bit of adhesive if I couldn't get those thumb screws on the back. I didn't want it too loose so it was wobbling around, so I slowly edged it. I cut it too small to start with, and then I edged it out with the jigsaw just to make sure I had a really secure fit. There is a few teething problems now I've got it installed. My voltage reading of my leisure batteries isn't quite as accurate as I would have liked. It's fluctuating quite a lot. I'm not sure whether I need to do a bit of calibration on that, but I'm going to do a bit of research into that. I've linked it up to my starter battery as well. That's reading perfectly fine, and the current drawn is perfect. When I turn something on, it's immediate, so it's telling me exactly what current's being drawn as it's being drawn. So I'm really happy with the unit. Hopefully I can get that voltage thing sorted. I'll give you a quick look at what the interface looks like and some of the buttons and some of the menus. On the main menu, I've got my starter battery. I can tweak all these, and here's my leisure battery screen. Now this is the voltage that's been intermittent. It seems to stabilise now, but I'm certainly going to do a bit more research into why it was doing that. And then the next one is my starter battery. I haven't got any other values on that. You can get those two on the same screen together, but I've just removed them because I wanted more information on this, so I wanted my current drawn. So you'll see now that if I turn my lights on, my current drawn will go up, and more lights. And if I turn my inverter on, I'll get a draw from my inverter there. I mean, it's not much because nothing's connected to the inverter. A bit of a spike at the beginning, but yeah, it's just going to show me my current draw, which is really useful information for me, because I want to be knowing what I'm drawing when, so I can decide how long I've got, because this van's intended purpose is to go off grid. I've managed to get a temperature sensor linked up as well, which again, it needs calibrating. saying it's minus 13 degrees Celsius, which it definitely isn't. So I can recalibrate this. All this can be renamed. The menu is quite comprehensive, and I've been told that if you access this from your phone, it's much easier to navigate. Not that it's hard to navigate through this screen, but it's not actually a touch screen, it's just touch buttons at the bottom. So any typing, if you want to rename modules or anything like that, you've got to do like a scroll system right the way through. Whereas if you're doing it on your phone, I would assume you're just going to type it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get off, I'm going to do a lot of research on this menu, I'm going to calibrate mine, I'm going to go into the ins and outs of every single bit of this menu, and I'm going to do a little user guide, which you'll find in the link down below once I do upload it. And hopefully you have enjoyed the video. If you have enjoyed the video, please do subscribe, and tune in for some more videos.